Picture standing in a room and seeing every version of it at once. The version from 10 years ago, the version happening right now, and the version that hasn't occurred yet, all layered on top of each other with equal weight, all equally real to you. That's the pitch this character runs on, built entirely out of physics nobody actually disputes. Quantum mechanics stretched to its logical extreme instead of a fantasy element bolted onto a body. But what would actually happen to a real human brain and real human matter if quantum theory were pushed that literally? Seeing every moment simultaneously, reshaping matter through intention alone, and crossing distance with zero travel time. Almost nobody checks whether the physics he supposedly built from actually permits any of what he does on screen. Today we run 3 real physical and neurological systems through that premise, in the order they'd actually break him. What happens to a mind forced to process every moment of its own timeline at once instead of one at a time? What real quantum mechanics says about intention reshaping large solid matter? And what the most rigorously tested principle in physics says about crossing distance with zero elapsed time? Each one alone contradicts the exact science this character is supposedly built from, which makes the contradiction the whole story. Start with seeing every point in time simultaneously, because it's presented as an upgrade rather than a catastrophe. Actually, human working memory is a real, measured bottleneck, and it doesn't just have a small capacity, it processes information sequentially by necessity, because conscious attention itself is a serial process, not a parallel one. Real neuroscientists studying divided attention already show that a brain trying to consciously track even 2 simultaneous streams of information suffers dramatic performance collapse in both streams at once, not a clean doubling of capacity the way the premise implies. A mind actually experiencing every moment of its own timeline as equally present wouldn't gain perfect knowledge. It would be running an unlimited number of simultaneous conscious threads through hardware that can barely sustain 2. The exact kind of catastrophic overload real clinicians already document in severe dissociative episodes, where a patient loses the ability to distinguish present reality from other mental content flooding in at once, just scaled from an occasional break in attention to every single instant of existence at once. Real cases of severe psychiatric crisis already show what happens when the brain's ability to prioritize a single timeline breaks down even briefly, flooding a person with competing versions of reality at once, and none of those documented cases describe the experience as clarity. Assume the mind somehow survives that flood. Now there's reshaping matter through pure intention, and this runs straight into what real physicists call the measurement problem, one of the most carefully tested boundaries in all of physics. Quantum effects, the genuinely strange stuff, only show up at extremely small scales, because any interaction with a large surrounding environment causes what's called decoherence, where a system's quantum behavior collapses into ordinary classical behavior almost instantly. Real physicists already measure this effect directly in controlled laboratories, watching delicate quantum states decohere in fractions of a second the moment they interact with anything as large as a single stray air molecule brushing past. A conscious intention influencing solid macroscopic matter isn't a bigger version of quantum weirdness, just scaled up in size and confidence. It's asking an effect that vanishes at the scale of single atoms to somehow reappear at the scale of a human body reorganizing solid steel, the opposite direction every real experiment on decoherence has ever pointed. Real quantum computing researchers already spend enormous effort and expense just keeping a handful of atoms isolated long enough to preserve a quantum state for microseconds, precisely because anything as large and warm and constantly interacting as a human body is already about as far from that isolated condition as physically possible to get. Say matter somehow bends to intention anyway. There's still the instant travel, and this is the part real physics is most stubborn about. Special relativity doesn't just discourage faster-than-light travel, it makes it structurally impossible without breaking causality itself, the basic rule that causes have to happen before their effects for every single observer in the universe, no exceptions built in anywhere. Real physicists already confirmed this isn't just a technology gap waiting on better engineering. Through decades of experiments on quantum entanglement, which looked for years like a potential loophole and instead demonstrated the opposite. Entangled particles can't be used to send usable information faster than light, no matter how instantaneous the underlying correlation looks on paper. A being crossing real distance with zero elapsed time wouldn't just need better engineering than we currently have. He'd need one of the most rigorously tested principles in physics to simply stop applying to him personally. The same principle every particle accelerator and every GPS satellite already depends on holding true every single day without exception. Real GPS systems already have to correct for tiny relativistic time differences just to stay accurate down to the meter. A constant everyday reminder that even small departures from these rules show up immediately in measurements most people never notice happening around them. So picture that room again, every version of it stacked on top of the others. The physics first pitch that was supposed to make this the most believable power set on this entire list. Run the real science, and the simultaneous timeline that was supposed to make him all-knowing turns into the exact overload real psychiatry already treats as a break from reality. The intention that was supposed to reshape matter runs directly into the same decoherence real physicists already watch shut down quantum effects the instant anything gets large enough to matter. And the instant travel that was supposed to make distance meaningless would require breaking the one rule every particle physicist and satellite engineer already relies on holding steady. Here's the part that should be reassuring instead of disorienting. Nobody needed a quantum accident to explain any of this. Real neuroscience already understands exactly why human attention has to stay sequential to function at all. Real quantum physicists already map precisely where decoherence takes over and ordinary classical rules resume. And real relativity already tells us exactly why causality holds everywhere anyone has ever actually looked for an exception. Nobody ever needed to step outside physics to be extraordinary. We just needed to keep learning what the physics we already have actually allows, one carefully measured experiment at a time.